Oseo,
Hoseo.
Cherokee greeting, and wave the great feather. Continuing from last week, which was Mother's Day, I'm going to keep going with that. But first of all, there are two, what I call issues, subjects, and things going on that everybody, certainly in this country, is aware of. One has to do with the Supreme Court, and it's poised to take away women's rights. The other one is Ukraine. Let me just introduce that real quickly. Here's this book. This is by Maria Gambudis of the Goddesses of Ancient Europe. Ukraine, since everybody is focused on that, seems to be really, really significant, as it is for all the horrors of the war that's going on there. Ukraine is a Russian name for the country. But the ancient culture that Maria Gambudis here is reporting on is a mother culture. So all of that Eastern, Mid-Eastern Europe is what she's calling it, is an ancient goddess culture. Going back really all the way 25,000 years. And the one here that I'm just referring to, the Kukuteni, would be in the region of Ukraine. So that's an ancient goddess culture. And it has beachfront property on the Black Sea also. The ancient name for the Black Sea is the Yushin, which means the friendly sea. And a Greek story or legend of Jason and the Argonauts was a rewriting of a goddess story by Apollo of Rhodes, I remember, like that. And that ship in the Argonaut story was originally a goddess ship called the Ship of Renewal. Just to give you a little clue how that these things got changed over time as men took over her world. But just to start off as an introduction here, I'm opening to this section here. You can make out this front piece page here, this picture. This is a vulva, and that pretty much is the kind of theme I'm going to be having today. But here, with all of the interest and focus towards Ukraine, to actually consider underneath its modernity is an ancient culture of, we call it the goddess, that totally feminine culture, and with many images of the feminine, pregnant females, animals, vulvas, and so on, and done over a long period of time. Claudia sent some photos of some of those things that appear here in this country to the author. And here's a picture of the author, Maria Gambudis. I think that's it. And anyway, she replied, there got a letter here, she replied to Claudia of recognizing things here, like the things that she has found and studied there in Eastern Europe. And that someday, even here, this knowledge may be allowed to be known in this country. So that's my introduction on that. Now I want to start off with a reading here to get this all going. This is from this book here. This is the Dakini by Judith Simmer Brown. So Dakinis are women Buddhist yogis. Okay, that's fair. And let me read this piece from her. Penetrating insight as manifested in the lives of women is a subtle, pervasive, and very intelligent energy, a kind of sharpness or sensitivity. In its basic nature, it is sentient awareness. But maybe in daily life, how it might come out so that it could be quite intense and hot and emotional. This heat and intensity of woman's energy can trip emotional triggers that can create enormous chaos. Wow. But this is to say in this way that women have a heightened ability to identify problems and to penetrate them without clinging to the results. This is all rather beneficent when intractable situations come out, like when his bureaucracy becomes overbearing, or a stubborn logics and old styles are in the fore. Her intensity can liberate the ponderous environment. Her intuition can see subtlety, injustice, and hidden motives. She can penetrate the identities and adjust them. And she also can be warm, generous, and compassionate, and care for others. I think that's very succinct, and you're really wonderful for that. Yes. So I have a lot of displays here, and the first one I want to show was continuing from last week. We're calling it the. This is the womb. What I call that, the penetrating womb.
Secondary.
The vessel of perception. That's what it was. This is my rendering here, conceptual, for the term I used last week. The womb that is perceiving, I think is the way I put it. So, woman, because that she has a womb, has this amazing, capability. She's very versatile, and she's very individualistic in her consciousness, and at the way that she can, interpret her senses. And in this way, we're focusing on her womb. In India, garba is the word for womb. Also, yoni is used. I'm not sure what difference it makes, but I'm tending to use garba in this talk. So that's the way that I'm kind of introducing this here. And we can go over here to the figure I have. There she is. Have you seen this? Last week. This is from the Dagon. This is an ancestress figure, very, very old. It was in a cave there. It's in Northwest Africa, their country. They are a matriarchal people. They also know themselves as actually having come from the star Sirius. So that's who this is, and what I've put on this. This is also Dagon. This is a cap, and you see on it all of these cowrie shells. Gauri in India is, again, the Gauri, the goddess. These are her images of her vulva. It's what we're talking about. Why? Why is this? In patriarchal religions, in religious traditions, removing the woman's head relieves woman of both identity and voice, and reduces her to a mere sexual and reproductive body. That's what the patriarchy has established, and is still trying to reinforce it like that. Here, with this cap on, this is to wake up woman that she has other functions. That's what I was introducing last week. The primary function, of course, is reproduction. But overall, the cultures of ancient time and the cultures who have still survived in the interest and passion of woman or goddess, has ways of, bringing about this secondary function, which we're calling evolution. The evolution is the meta. It's a meta-empirical. It's a metaphysics. It's beyond everything we have already evolved to. Our bodies are not going to evolve anymore. But there's something that's more transcendent, you might say. And the focus here is to bring women to that. The women, mostly American women. Women in other cultures, evidently, it is quite evident, have known of this and have ways of having this consciousness. The Dakinis I just introduced would be one of them. Now, speaking in a Sanskrit from the sutra, the Deva Sutra, Evati Mahinda Sambhavua, I have become this creation by my own power. That's the goddess. That's the goddess who is speaking there. So all these ways of awakening the second function, I think is the best way that I could put it. And I'd also earlier talked about the universal force that I like the Kauia name, the Kauia people out here, the Iva'a. Iva, because that means strength or power, something like that. When it's extended into Iva'a, then it's a transcendental, universal force, energy, power. And what's needed is for the woman to connect herself. And so I have this good old lizard here, somebody's big old lizard here, because the lizard, because it bends itself and everything, serves as an image for the link, for women to, link up with that force. That's all the theme that I have here. And along with this, I have a little figure down here. This is also a Dagon figure. This is intended, it's very old and worn, as a female spirit, to help women and to protect women here. And while we're over here, this rock that I bring out every once in a while, this is a spirit womb, kind of called a fertility rock, and it's for the spirit of the woman's womb. And it's a rock that's warmed, and the young woman, it's a young woman who is laying usually in a depression in the earth that has been warmed up for her. And in some ceremonial way, the other women place this in her very lower abdomen, almost like the way the figure here has the legs of the child under her belly. This would very much, go with that. And while we're still over here, this painting here I have very accurately replicated. This is from Africa. This is from South Africa. It's a painting by the Kalahari Bushmen. Now, it's evident, it's become evident to, researchers and all, that these people, the Bushmen, they're little people, not quite like pygmies. They're another race of little people. And they've had painters among them for eons, just forever. And, they've been known to carry, painters' kits with them, like that. And this is one, and this painting itself was in the woman care clinic here in San Diego. And, well, you can try to interpret it any way you like, but I'm including her in this theme that I'm doing here. So it's very good to have her along with us here. And I think we're going to take a look at my centerpiece here. Now, you can see the African cast of this. This is my rendering of an African goddess, Yamoja, in West Africa, which is also a river. So she's very, very prominent, and what I've done here is this would symbolize, in my painting, her womb. And who is in her womb this is a womb bud boy. His name is Eshu. Eshu. And Eshu is much the same as Coyote. Coyote here, Eshu there. and Eshu and Coyote are womb bud boys. That's what they are. And we reside in her generative organ, always. And the bud aspect is a mode of transforming, translating, or anything like that to the womb of a woman without ever losing what we are here in her womb. So that's very much a part of it. When I'm on that subject, we'll come to right down here, this board here. This is from West Africa. It's a divining board, and the figure here is Eshu. So the diviner, he has a rice flower on it, and he holds it level. And this little head, here's another little ivory head of Eshu. And the diviner has a way of holding the board horizontal and tapping it so that the rice flower seems to take certain configurations, and he is able to interpret that. So here Eshu has, a continuation into this. Here in Native America, I'm just kind of being, kind of polite with this, but the Northwestern European assault on Native America has been terrific. And if you've read the recent news in the paper, 150 to 200,000 Native American children were taken from their communities and families and forced into forced assimilation schools. Everything to destroy its culture side, in other words. So a lot of things have dropped out, that could have been here, and that's one of them. And while I'm still here, we go down here to this figure. This figure is from the Caribbean. This is a Caribbean version of Eshu, but I have it here particularly because he has the cowrie features for his eyes and nose and mouth, and he looks like a bud. So that has a very much of a bud look to it there, maybe from Haiti. It's a culture that's in the Caribbean called the Orisha culture, and has a lot of divining in it. And on each side of it, on here, these are figures, fertility figures from Africa. No, this one's from India, and this one's from Africa. There, and what's displaying here is her yoni. She's making it very evident, her yoni here. And when I go down here, because we're all on the same line of focus, this doll is from India, and this is for the Navaratri. The Navaratri in November means the 9 nights of Durga. So this is a major goddess celebration, and this doll here is in the total attire of that. And along with that, here there's a pot. The pots, and this is a special pot, for this occasion, also means her womb. Definitely means her womb. And this month, the month of May, is also the time of the Ganga. The Ganga is also a river, but she's also a goddess. And the alligator is her symbol. I don't have one on hand, but I do have this bottle here. This is from India, a special bottle of the water of the Ganga for anybody who wants to do some ritual with it. Here, you can see it. And while I have that subject going, can we come over here, to this? This is, really like a household shrine. And Garbha, like I said, that's the name for womb. And Garbhagriha, it means the womb chamber. So that's what is figured. Now sometimes these are even, larger ones of course, that are constructed either inside of a temple or alongside of a temple. And inside is the figure of Parvati. That's the Hindu name for her. Parvati and her parthenogenic son Ganesha. So that's the two figures in there. And here I have surmounted the top of this shrine with a little Indian pot, because the temples and the shrines somewhere are going to have this pot on it, which definitely says this is her womb. Whereas this particular structure is definitely saying this is her womb chamber. So that's very specific in that way. Then, while we're traveling here with India, if we can go up here to this figure here. This is, really extraordinary. I'm really so happy to have this. This is very, very old. It's Parvati. Parvati has, various names. The Parvati seems to be pretty much the Hindu, meaning pretty much, daughter of the mountains. Kali Paramis Bakura. Somehow that's her South Indian name. That's where this is from. South India is the Tamil Nadu people, and they are also a pre-Hindu, and so a lot of things in their culture are not the same as in the larger dominant Hindu culture. And here, this is very interesting because here she's wearing a skirt of leaves, so she's a forest person. And here her hair is, piled up on top of her head, very much as a yogi. She would be a yogi. So this is very different from the Hindu version of Parvati, whom they have, made the wife of the Hindu version of Shiva. Again, Ganesha and Shiva and Parvati are actually indigenous deities of the Tamil Nadu of South India. And these people have stemmed from way over there to the other side, to the very western side of India, which is now Pakistan, where there's a river running north and south called the Sindh, or the Indus. And so the ruins of that ancient civilization is referred to that way as the ancient Indus Valley civilization. What happened to those people, no one's quite sure. But what I can see is that I think it could be droughts, or the rivers dry up. But anyway, they've stemmed over to the country here in very southern India. So while we're over there, we'll look at this figure here. When in college, when I first, enlisted in the course, for this Indian art history, when I came into the lecture hall, this picture was the very first thing that I saw up on the screen, and I've been very infatuated with it. So it's from the Indus Valley civilization. It's anywhere between 5,000 or 7,000 years old, very much in terms of time corresponding to those things in Eastern Europe. So her yoni is, very visible. And so here, we go down below it. I'm always wishing I will find one like that. So this is my version. This is a Dogon. This is a Dogon figure. This one and this one may be close to the same size. But again, her yoni is being very exposed, and her umbilicus is very protruded, as usually is in African sculptures, definitely always maintaining that. Incidentally, Eshu and Coyote could also be termed umbilicus, the umbilicus boys. Use that like that. And then we have over here, this is from India, I think maybe even from Central Asia, I'm not quite sure, but I have it here because of the, it's the only figure I've seen, it appears to be pregnant. She certainly has that body of a pregnant woman. Now the ones that Gambudis has displayed in her book are made out of clay and would appear a lot or less refined than this is. And here I want to go back over here. This figure. This is a replica that I've gotten. This is from the Indus Valley also. So this is also a figure, like 5,000–7,000 years old, like that. And this is one of the more refined figures compared to the ones that they have unearthed there in that ancient country here. And we go over here to this here. This is a mask form. This is Manassa. Manassa basically means the snake goddess, we put it simply. But what it really is about in this theme is the snake is a figure for the awareness of woman in her womb. So some figures, it can show the snake emerging from her womb. And so it's like that. Interesting, because all of these have Sanskrit phonemes, and I'm saying Manassa, that's her. Then there's an emphasis on the first phoneme, Manassa, Manassa, and that means, you know, a mental worship that brings a person into accord with themselves, with her, and it has, you know, certain relative principles, but it's meant to be natural, and that's the other thing we're stressing in her culture here. It's something that's natural. Samaja, it will mean that. Which also reminds me that the womb bud boy, like that, in India is also Mahasava. So that means that he resides in her generative organ. So this is to say, definitely in India there has remained and continues a culture of this kind of womb awareness, you know. Again, the phoneme ga, I've written it down here. Upate ga vrishniva duhitar devahi, meaning we pray to the daughter of light as a milk cow, and the ga signifies the power of making woman able to go to or to attain her own selfhood. Atmat tattva. So that's the way all of these things are coming together, and we're mentioning here the snake woman and what the snake is, you know, of her consciousness. And above it, this is, I've mounted this. This is actually a photograph of a figure about this size from India that is being used with the Sanskrit name Adiki, meaning she is the goddess of everything, of all. And the sculpture itself is in very refined red clay. So that would be very much a part of this, the color of the clay that I've mounted in this way. And you can see, to me, I see sort of a resemblance to this figure, to the Bushman figure over here. It seems similar. And above that, here's the African carving, a little carving that has a loop, so a person can wear it, you know, as a fetish here. And one thing, we come over here to Mexico to see this. And this display is the only one thing I have from Mexico. This was dredged from the Coyote in Yucatan. And here just the other night on the KPBS, they were showing what happened to the dinosaurs. They became extinct because a meteorite 66 million years ago crashed into Yucatan. And in short order brought about the extinction of the dinosaurs, whereas the mammals who lived underground and so forth survived, and we have evolved from them. But here, this figure here, you know, also displays her yoni. To me, it looks like she kind of looks like an owl. The piece probably was cast in Costa Rica, and somebody brought it to Yucatan and dropped it into the Coyote. The Coyote are these big wells, you know, in the ground. And so there was a lot of offerings. And there in the 60s, that's when I was there, they were being dredged. They were being dredged in order to recover the artifacts that were in them, and that's where this comes from here. Oh, I should, you know, mention this here. This is actually from a goddess site in Eastern California. And so it, to me, very similar to the Adiki of India. So rocks, stones, and so forth are very much a part of her culture. In India, her shrines usually will have rocks. You'll have, like 3 stones usually in front of it. Some of them, they have special masks that they make for these stones, but definitely showing that stones are continue as a part of her culture. Now, the Hawaiians, this is also the month to celebrate, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, which includes the Hawaiian Islands. The recent report by Deb Holland about these forced assimilation schools also included the Hawaiians. I didn't know that before. But the Hawaiians were subject to everything that Native Americans were subject to, except the bugle of the cavalry, since they didn't have any cavalry horses over there. But anyway, let me read this piece from her. This definitely is my image for the great woman of Hawaii. O woman spirit and ancestral chiefess, woman spirit at the rising and setting places of the sun, woman spirits in the firmaments of the heavens and of the clouds, to Hinalani, heaven woman, to all the women spirits, it is yours, the mana, to brush aside darkness, brush aside death, brush aside trouble. This is I, Coyote, your very offspring in this world of the living. Homai, mana, give me mana. The kapu is profound, the freeing profound here in this true earthly life. It is perfected. Ama, free. Noah, Noah. And it does remind me of another thing here, is India. The feminine name of India is Jambu Bapa, Jambu Bapi, which literally is the rose apple, meaning the pomegranate. So that the pomegranate has long been a symbol of her. There in the Mediterranean, we have in Spain a country called Granada. So that's a kind of a pre-patriarchal Spanish designation. So Granada is the Spanish name meaning the pomegranate. Now here in the southwest, Coronado is the southwest version of Ukraine's version of Putin, who invaded the southwest, and he had been in raids into Northwest Africa and had recognized these people. He absolutely believed that he had found them here in the pueblo later named Zuni. And on the Spanish maps, it shows that Zuni is titled Nueva Granada, meaning that the Spanish believed that these people, who are really Berbers from North Africa, were actually descendants of these earlier people, and that they call themselves the Cabal. They are the warriors of the goddess Sybil, or pronounced Cabal. And so they're relating the image of the pomegranate. It was also over here by way of that language. So that's all the way that we can talk about these things. So in all this way, I hope that it does bring some enlightenment. I have one other piece here to mention. This is a book of Hypatia. And Hypatia was a woman scientist, we say ahead of her time, in Alexandria in the 5th century. And she was murdered by fanatical Christian monks, horribly murdered. and so forth. And this is, her story, and it has a lot of profundity in it. And so I do want to read this little piece that I've lifted out of there. There exists the essence that is the impulse to do, to realize the void or nothingness, is the creative principle from which we come, to which we return. And there exists quality, which comes from energy. But if anyone is attracted by other substances or forces or even stars, then a quality, the exact expression of a request, must intervene. Quality intervenes and fulfills the action. Our function is the creation of qualities. The continual expansion of the cosmos, that is the evolution of the cosmos in the space, which increases in quality so as to, which increases in quantity so as to increase in quality. So that's from the Book of Hypatia. Since we're talking about evolution, we're talking about qualities, we're talking about woman to realize the freedom which she holds possibilities within her womb when she is relieved from the social institutionalized reproduction cycle. Kind of put it simple, meaning there is also for woman more than one choice, at least. And what to finish this with, since I mentioned Shiva, this is a Mary Oliver poem. It's to me very fitting for my theme, but very fitting for the time that we're concerned with in this country. If you listen to it carefully, because I'm kind of going to read it slowly, since Mary Oliver, the poet, is addressing Shiva. Shiva, pretend you are with me, as the doe in her summer red coat tiptoes down through the pines and enters the pasture. She neither hurries nor hesitates. She knows exactly how carefully it must be done. Shiva, I know the odds. If the fawn is where she left it, the world in that moment will go on being created. And if the fawn has vanished, it is the destroyer's hour, the Lord of life and death. I just wanted you to stand here for a moment, not like the God they have made of you, but like a mortal being, so you can see for yourself how the doe carefully vanishes into the grass. And then when she emerges, how the heart leaps joyfully if the world steps out beside her, that little dancer still licking milk from its lip, pearls that tell. Mary Oliver from her book, Blue Horses. Thank you.